Train by day, Kyle Wigington podcast by night, all day.
Digital breakfast.
That is me. Digital breakfast, waffle. You know,
he's a man of many names, many names.
Somehow, I don't know how I've gotten this many names.
I think one of the first things we can do here
okay,
is sample some cookies.
Okay.
Are you on a diet right now, or can you eat cookies?
I can eat cookies.
So the girl that was on the podcast a while ago, she brought me some cookies she made. I just pinched a piece off, but I was like, I'm going to eat the rest of them after we go. So this one right here, actually, I'm going to give you a piece of it and let you test the flavor on it. See what you think the flavor profile is. You get the big one.
All right.
Oh shit, she wrote it on there. Fuck.
Oh yeah, it's on there, but
you can't read it. Don't read it. What do you think it is?
I mean,
you already read it?
Yeah.
Damn it, Waffle. Damn it, you already read this one too. Shit. Game over. So, chocolate chip, marshmallow, and potato chip.
Okay.
There's potato chips in that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's good though, right?
Yeah, no, it was actually really good.
Okay. This one you already know what the flavor is, but whatever. I gave it a small one that time. I feel like it's just enough flavor that it makes it good. You know, it's not too much. Like some cookies you eat are like too sweet.
It tastes very Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Very festive.
Cranberry, orange, oat.
I don't know what about it, but it tastes like a Christmas tree.
Both delicious.
Pine flavor in there.
Both freaking delicious. Claire Kelly, reach out to her. Get you some cookies. So Waffle, I'm going to refer to you as Waffle, not Digital Breakfast, but
okay.
Digital Breakfast is who he is, but we all know him as Waffle. How do we meet?
Okay. Well, I left college in 2013. I moved back home and I got into acting. And that's where I met Adam through a Tulane student film. And then through Adam, that's how I met you.
Yeah, Adam was my old roommate.
So yes, through your old roommate.
Dope. Yeah, Waffle and I, we've done some cool stuff since we met. He works in film also. And we do things all together at a time. Or we do things all the time together.
Sometimes. Not everything together.
Everything. He just went to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom.
Nice.
What's been going on, dude?
I don't know too much. I feel like the last couple years have been kind of insane. A lot of random stuff. Not really predictable.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just shot some B-roll for a music video this week. It went pretty good. We got some cool stuff in the cemetery.
Did you cut it together yet?
No. No, I just shot it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize. Even when it comes to this podcast, like we normally film them and shoot them on Sundays.
Yeah.
Well, I say we. I film them on Sundays.
Team.
Yeah, my whole team that's here right now, young Jamie and everything. But then I had to edit them too, so it takes like that length of time. I had a guy reach out to me yesterday. You remember the time we filmed open mic here, like the second time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was asking for that footage. Luckily, I still have it archived. I had to go edit his footage for him. He's fixing to release an album. It's pretty dope.
Cool.
Yeah, I like to see people grow.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, shooting the open mics were really fun. I like that we had a dolly for that one. Shot was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to get us a dolly.
Ooh, Dana dolly.
Dude, there's so many like new cool things that come out all the time. I see them on Instagram, like all these new film products and stuff. I'm like, I would love to have one of those, but then next week something new comes out and I'm like, oh shit.
Well, that's the unfortunate thing about technology is it grows at a logarithmic rate. So, I mean, it'll just keep getting better and better and more price efficient.
So you might as well not buy anything ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people do rentals most of the time.
No, I just mean steal it.
That you could do that too. There's nothing wrong with it falling off a truck.
What we were talking earlier about in California, you know, you can steal like under $1,000 worth of stuff and not get prosecuted.
You can steal a lot and get away with it. I mean, have you seen like the train tracks just littered with packages and? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that picture. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, people are definitely taking advantage of it.
Makes you wonder how you even get anything in the mail.
luck.
So
It's on your side.
Well, the other day, the FedEx guy shows up and he has 2 big boxes, like huge boxes. And I knew we didn't order anything. I was like, hi. And I looked at the address and he's like, the address is different on here, but the person at that address told me to deliver these here. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. So here you go. Here's 2 boxes. And I was like, okay. So I pull them inside and they're 2 massive chairs, like huge chairs. I didn't open them up. I just looked at the package. And then I was like, oh, we'll see if the lady comes and gets them. That afternoon, some lady came in and got the 2 chairs. I was like, who does that? Who just has their package delivered to a random business?
That is very weird.
And then goes and gets and we didn't know who it was either.
You should have kept them.
Well, I put them in the closet. I was like, if she didn't come, we got 2 new chairs. But no, she came in.
Because, I mean, can't hurt to have more chairs around here.
No, they were nice too. I looked the price of them up and everything.
Yeah, for movie night, they'd be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Movie night. What's going to be the next one?
I don't know. Probably something Halloween related.
It'll be Halloween, won't it then?
Yeah, probably Halloween. But yeah, other than shooting that music video earlier this week, shot a wedding and just had a few other random stuff like that.
Yeah, you're doing all kind of shit, man. You're doing school pictures, shooting weddings. You do headshots for people. You film music videos. You're into the crypto space heavily. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you live life with all that stuff going on?
It's very chaotic because it's trying to keep track. That's the thing is I think people like learn their workflow of like what they do or like what their work or what their job is. And once you have that, you kind of have like your set schedule and you do what you do. But when you start adding more and more and more and more, it always interests me that everything has a little bit of a different workflow or way of doing it. So then you have to kind of like put on a different hat each time and it can kind of get a little confusing or a little mixed up, but I don't know. I think it's kind of easier to do it the way that I'm doing it because I mostly just shoot it and I don't have to worry about the edit or delivery. So that makes it easier other than like if it's my own thing. And then as far as keeping up with like the digital stuff, I mean, all you need is your computer for that. So it's not like I can do both. Like there's times where I'm like shooting and then I'll go run off to the car and like load up my laptop and do what I need to do for that day, for that hour or whatever it is. So it's one of those things where I actually have to do it while I'm working. But the type of jobs that I do, it makes it feasible. Yeah. So where I'm not just like working a job where I'm like constantly having to do something and I can't stop to go take a moment and go do whatever I have to do.
Yeah, you kind of set your own hours a little bit.
Yeah. Like I was shooting, doing something for there's like this national tax credit for kids that people, if they are under a certain poverty line, they can qualify for it. And I've been going around the state shooting, or I'm one of the 2 shooters that have been going around collecting footage. They'll have like pop-ups and kind of teach people how to get it. And I had went to go shoot one of the tax credits in it's like a little bit above Baton Rouge. And afterwards I had to hop on my computer and do something. So it wasn't like in the same time frame, but it was like I had to be on my computer like instantly afterwards. And it's like a 2-hour, because it was North Baton Rouge, it's about an hour and a half from here. So say I had to come back for some reason or the gig had run over, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But it's just like I'm able to kind of set it up to where I can play both. Yeah.
Some people can't do that. Like some people need that structure in their life. I think it's for me, I love that kind of living that kind of life too, like setting my own hours, doing things in an unstructured way to most people, but it's structured in my mind. But I think some people need that routine of like, I'm going to work here 40 hours a week. Then I'm going to have my 2 days off on the weekends.
Oh, 100%.
I don't get those people, but I know they exist.
Well, I think it's what people pursue or like what they're into. For me, I just like things being like really hectic or weird or random. It's like why I shot pro wrestling for all those years, because it's just really absurd. Like you get in really weird situations where like really goofy or weird things are happening. So I like love absurdity. So for me doing this, it's like it optimizes that. So it's like, oh, cool. Like I can play in this digital universe and get like tons of assets or value. And I can go travel to like New York or LA. And it's like this picture of this item got me into a Gucci party. And now I'm like friends with people at Gucci or Vogue or whatever.
He's talking about NFTs for those uninitiated.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna call them that. We're gonna call them digital collectibles.
Or excuse me,
Just so
digital.
that we don't get like the heat, you know.
Look, like the only reason people give heat about the word NFT is because they don't understand the utility of NFTs.
Well, it depends. Some don't have that.
What? And that's why you're here. Tell us the utility of NFTs, Mr. Digital Currency. What is
digital
it?
currency.
Digital what?
No,
Digital breakfast.
Digital
Yes.
breakfast. But I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily has to be a utility. I mean, it's just a way to verify that you own something, which is not. It's
That's a
really
utility.
yeah, but it's really not that interesting. Like I think it.
What do you mean? I think it's greatly interesting.
I think it got blown out of proportion over the last year.
Well, the way they've been marketing it blew it out of proportion. Like just telling people that it's just a JPEG. It's like, no, it's not just a JPEG. It's a JPEG that you can attach code to. And that's what gives it utility. Like people just haven't, not many people had dove into that part of it yet, but literally you can attach code to these things and you can create smart contracts and deals like this.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a way to optimize how we interact in a digital space. And I mean, we as a society have been interacting in a digital space for, well over 2 decades at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming more and more and more a part of our daily lives. And we haven't found a way to innovate or make it more optimal. And I mean, smart contracts are like, what we see today as being NFT. It's been around, it's like, didn't just get born last year. Right.
Right.
So, but the utilization of it, or like, I guess like its adoption really took off. But something to think about is like currently there's only, I think about 10,000 truly active wallets in the space. So if you think of something like Google or Facebook or Instagram, I mean, you're talking about like billions of users. And then you're talking about like 10,000 people are utilizing this technology regularly right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it also just kind of shows how like it's in its infinite, or it's like in its infant stage right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why a lot of people are like weirded out by it, because it doesn't have many practical use cases currently. Like we're trying to figure it out. It's new. It's a learning experience for everybody. And then since it doesn't have like a lot of practical use cases, it's very hard to use. It's scary to use.
It is scary. Okay. I'll give you that. When you're sending ETH or something out to somebody, you're like, this is money. It's going out.
This is gone forever. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons, rightfully so, why people don't like it. And then of course the culture that took on it, that got taken to it, is like, oh, well, because again, there's only about like currently, I mean, at the time there was more active wallets, but when you start talking about something like the valuation of something, like scarcity can create value if there's demand, because it's a supply and demand curve. So like these tokens only have 10,000 most of the time for the PFP, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. But if it becomes really popular or like a major brand and you have a way to license it and keep it locked up, well, just like they take diamonds and put them in a vault,
Mm-hmm.
when these items, because it's like you said, it's a piece of software, like a token. Well, there's only 10,000 of them. So when it starts to lock up, that's when we saw the value increase. And that's when we saw the ridiculousness of people who got some of the right projects and they skyrocketed in value. And the wrong sides of it came out as they started flexing. You're like, oh, I have this, and turning up at parties, which I've seen that side of it in person a lot, where people, it's like,
So like they didn't have anything, and then they started getting some money in their life. They started like,
oh yeah,
turning to the dark side essentially.
Oh, a lot of people in this space did. And it was funny going to a lot of like the parties and stuff and just seeing the mindsets or how people were viewing it at the time. Obviously, tax season's passed and everything. So I think it's a little bit of a different game for these people. But at the time, it was like a nerd Wolf of Wall Street almost.
Oh.
Not saying that Wolf of Wall Street wasn't for nerds, but this is like, if there was ever a Wolf of Wall Street for nerds, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think people, especially this early, there isn't like a fully practical use, and not a technology that makes it applicable. But if you look at something like, I mean, technology's grown so much that since we've seen, like, you probably first started using the internet in like 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
Well, you went in the span of 22 years, you went from that to having a smartphone with like TikTok on it, right? So that's very quick. And what we've seen is when the technology catches up and we have a way for it to be in everyone's possession and easily digestible, it becomes very utilized. So like if you look at something like Amazon, how it scaled, a lot of scaling of Amazon became from it being like you're on this like shitty dial-up service to, it's become this more of like this social value because we had like, Web 2 social media. So there's a way to kind of socialize with the network. And then there's a way to like, oh, well, Apple invented the iPhone, which is the smartphone, which is easier than me using my phone. Now there's an Amazon app. So I can go on that and I can order things.
Right.
And it's the best prices around. So that way they could generate a better user base or a wider user base. Because it's just about collecting, all at the end of the day, data analytics. But so you saw Amazon going from being like, oh, well, people are like, screw this, it can't beat Sears, to it not only beating Sears, but everyone's got a Sears in their pocket.
Right.
And then now they've got it down to like 2 day. Some places have 1 day. Some places have same day. So it's like before you'd have to actually go to the store, see if they have it, purchase it, whatever.
Dude, the same day delivery is the wildest shit ever. Like
Yeah.
I got something one day, I bought something and they literally brought it to the bar. And it's like right after I bought it, I was like, so I don't even have to go to the store to get it. Like it was at the store, they just brought it to me. I was like, it's crazy.
Right. So they were able to utilize this technology to streamline product to consumer. And they, it's also this huge data analytics company because they're seeing like what products, how many, who's buying it, where, stuff that they didn't really fully have the grasp on with stores because of the tracking of the merchandise. Because if you think about it, when the customer goes in, if they didn't have like a customer profile, they don't know who's buying what, when, where, how. Now it's like you have a customer profile on Amazon. It knows who, what, when, where, how. And I think that's the exciting thing about this technology is because you're building these digital assets. And, something too that's really a newer concept is this thing called a phygital. So now I'm going to take this whole idea of how Amazon scaled and kind of see how like you could utilize this into the future is.
You said phygital?
Yeah, phygital. So it's like, a digital and a physical item. I don't know if that term will catch.
Are these the hot wallet things you were talking about? Or something different?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely different.
This is your word? Did you just make this word up?
So it got kind of popular in the space. I don't think it will stay because it's kind of a lame term, but it's what is being used now. And basically it's a way to where like, I'll use this green tea as an example, but like if I purchase this green tea, it could have a QR code on it that I could scan into my wallet and then I could get a digital version of this green tea. So then it's tied to the physical items tied to the digital item. So then like the NFT represents this. And I think as far as like, if you look at like KYC, which is knowing your customer and building digital profiles and gaining analytics, if you look at what Google or Alphabet's done over the last couple of decades, what blockchain technology could do is now it's like Amazon got it down to like who buys what, when, where, how, and we've got all this analytics, but we don't know what the customer does with the item afterwards, how long they keep it in their possession, who they give it to, whatever, like all that information's lost. But you can really ramp up your sales and marketing when you start to have like this whole idea of aftermarket sales. And that's what we're seeing with this is, well, now I have this in my wallet. Now, of course, this is only in the digital space, but when I have it in my wallet, I could have like a little room in the metaverse and can put where I store it, how I store it, who sees it, who doesn't see it, how much I wear the digital shirt, how much I don't. And
that's terrifying.
I don't disagree with that side of it, but if you're looking at like, well, what's the use case or how could you scale this technology? I think that's a lot of what companies are going to be looking at and investing in.
A way to make money off of it. Yeah.
Well, and it helps the consumer create value too, because think about like brand sponsorship or something. Like let's say Nike wants to reward people who wear Nike. Well, the more you wear your Nike, the more it could have awareness of that. Because if you tie the two together and there's a way for them to track that to some degree, which we already have phones and everything else gets tracked anyway.
That's a good point. Yeah. The people that are wearing your merch are now your marketing team.
Yeah.
So the more they wear it, the more benefits you give them. Therefore they have, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a reason to keep wearing your merchandise.
Correct. So what we saw in the space from 2013 to maybe like 2017, 2018 is we saw a lot of macro influencers. So you saw like people who were bigger in the space, they get big brand deals, but you didn't really have micro influencers. Well, something that became really big with TikTok is micro influencers. Companies started paying people with a niche following, like say you have 8,000 to 50,000 followers on TikTok or whatever. You were more valuable than the big person who had 2 million because of your engagement. You had a smaller community who interacted with each other, people who really liked your product. So you were getting bigger brand deals because you were a micro influencer. So this brings it down to the fact to where anyone can become a micro influencer. And the way they could utilize that, again, is by rewarding you through wrapping your merch. So like I'm wearing polo right now. Say this was a Phygital. Maybe there could be some way where I get a discount or something of that nature, which we've seen rewards cards before anyway, with like Target or I'll use Sears as an example again, but all of these places have, like, I have the Chipotle app, and when you purchase Chipotle enough, you get a free meal or whatever. But they'll be able to tie this all into one singular network with verification, which is extremely scary if used incorrectly. And it's also very neat in a way, because this is my theory on things. We saw the digital space kind of, like I said, we'll say like late 90s, it started to get very utilized. And, you know, the last 22 years, it's become this insane thing where some people's screen hours are like 8-9 hours a day of being on phone, laptop, whatever. So our attention span's got more and more digital space. But what has been the value or reward that you gain from that? So if you think about in the physical world, when I go work a job or I sell something, I can create value to where I can get new items that I may need or more product. Like there's an economy. Well, that economy doesn't really exist. We don't really have a digital economy that's been created yet, because there was no way to track the value.
Yeah.
There was no way to create value. There was no way to have like an item, a digital item that could be somebody's and could be transferred. So what we're seeing is almost like a digital industrial revolution. So like if you think about when we went from like farming to industry in this country and we started building automation, we're seeing the next version of that right now.
Yeah.
And it's just like ridiculously stupid early, like impossible to conceive. Because I mean, just because you're aware of it doesn't mean that you know how far it could go or what it becomes,
or that you even understand it. Like some people, they're aware that like crypto exists, but they have no clue what it even is. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with this space is that people can't. You said this earlier. They can't digest it. It's not digestible yet. They can't understand it yet. Because like, I think Elon Musk was on a talk one time, and he was saying that the biggest problem with humans or we don't need humans to live forever, because the only way to implement new technology is for the old people to die out and the new people to come up. Because it's when old people, when they get to like a certain age, their brains, they're hardwired to like not really change. So when it comes to these new technologies, they can't really understand that well. I think that's what's good about our group is that we grew up with technology in our hands, so we can kind of pick up on these things a little easier.
Yeah, we're aware of the changes. A little more accepting of them too.
Yeah, I think it's a cool space. There's been I played around with it a little bit, just designing like systems and stuff. And I think it's pretty fun that you can. So one of the systems I was playing around with was one for the music industry. I think the music industry is a big racket right now, but one of the ways you can use these digital tokens to help the artists out is to, whenever they put their new album on Spotify, they'll take half of their streaming rights and they'll attach it to a token, and they can give that token or that NFT to their fans, and they can say, look, the more streams we get on Spotify, the more money you'll make. So then their fans become their marketing team, just like that. And they're getting paid to actually push the music of the artists. So the more they push the music, the more money they make. Then also, if that band blows up, they're nothing right now, but they blow up, every time they resell the NFT, they get a percentage of that.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, and again, that's just like kind of one of the use cases. And I think if we use like crypto as a broad term, there's like a lot of different ways to utilize the technology, and people are still obviously creating new concepts and new ways of doing things. Yeah,
we're just scratching the surface of it right now.
100%. I mean, I think there's ideas that are far from having even been thought of.
Digital voting.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was, when you had brought up like your app idea, that was one thing that I was thinking is, you know, there'd be a lot that would go to it, unfortunately, because there's always a way to undo or meddle with something. But that'd probably be one of the stronger ways, is if you had a way to KYC and have a really strong understanding of each person who had what token, then of course digital voting is huge. And right now they have DAOs in the space, and they've been creating these ordinance currencies where people can vote on things using, you know, basically using the tokens to vote. So I think that's a very interesting
We got somebody looking in right now. Watch him. He'll try to come in too. He knows we're podcasting. Door's locked.
Well, that's good.
Nah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, we're just scratching the surface of what all can be done with this space.
Well, so the whole space is a software, right? And with any software that we've seen from, let's just go all the way back to like Windows or to Macintosh, it became about how intuitive is the software for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're still using our old hardware to use this new software. So until there is some type of new item that we can utilize.
You mean the body, right? We're using the body to access.
I mean, you could, if you look at like the advancements that are happening with Neuralink or anything to do with like Google Glass, or my favorite, which is Windows. I mean, not Windows. Microsoft actually has their own holographic headset.
I haven't seen that
yet. The HoloLens.
Dope.
HoloLens has been around for a while. They keep innovating on it though. And I think they have some of the best technology next to Meta. Unfortunately, because I'm not a big fan of Meta, but
is that the Quest? Is that Meta? Is that their thing?
So yeah, Meta.
Whose is the Quest platform? What platform is that?
So Meta bought Oculus. So Oculus came out. It was like a Kickstarter, and it became a whole thing, and it was really good. And then of course Facebook bought it. Facebook's now Meta, and they're innovating on it because they know that the whole merge of AR to VR technology is going to be like the future, the next like say 10 to 20 years. So that's why they bought it, and they've been really innovating on it. But I think Microsoft, even though they don't have the platform, I think they have some of the most promising technology, because the HoloLens was way ahead of its time, and it's a really cool piece of technology.
There's glasses. What are they?
Yeah, it's like a headset pair of glasses, and it basically, just like you play Pokemon Go, it creates and puts these objects in reality to where you can interact with them. So like you could put a piano right here that only you would see, and you could play it.
Augmented reality.
Yeah. But it's a tangible augmented reality. It's not just like, here it is, and you can see it and kind of like put your hand around it. Like you can actually utilize the tools that are in that space. So if there's like a guitar or a piano, it knows what keys you're pressing. You can make music with it.
We have gloves on?
Mm-mm.
How does it know this?
It's like a sensor, like the space.
Oh, well, there is a thing on my Quest that it recognizes your hands. You have to set it up, but that way you don't even have to use the controls.
Yep.
Yeah, you can like use your hands to do shit.
Yeah, because what is it? It was like the Vive controllers or whatever. I'm trying to think what they were called. But yeah, like we're getting past the point of needing that. I mean, I think about like iToy for PlayStation, which is like a really rudimentary version of all of this. But iToy was super cool.
What was it? I remember that one.
So PlayStation 2 had this technology where you had the camera and you plugged it in, and all the games were you interacting. It was kind of like...
Is it called the Kinect? Was that what it was called?
That was for Xbox, and that came out a little bit later. But yeah, the iToy was kind of the first of its kind like that, where what it would do is it would green screen your whole background out, and you'd be in the game and you could touch things and be a part of it. I mean, it wasn't the best, but it was cool, especially at the time. I mean, it was very innovative. And since I was younger, I always kind of like realized how cool that could be if we had the technology to catch up to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's going to be. Like Apple's App Store couldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for the iPhone. It's like software meets hardware. So there's people who are emulating this. Like there's another blockchain called Solana, and they're building their own phone, which would run on Solana. I don't know if emulating what Apple did is going to be the answer, because what Apple did was innovative. So what it's going to have to be is somebody's going to have to create the next thing. And then again, people are going to want to have to kind of like want to like, you know, like they're going to want to utilize it. There's going to have to be like a purpose. We went from iPods. So it's like, okay, we had like CD players and, you know, Walkman and like cell phones, like razors and stuff. They made it like this one-stop shop of everything in one. Mm-hmm. We even had digital cameras eventually, because in the original iPhones, you couldn't take video, but eventually they caught up and you could do video and stuff. And they took the smartphone and made it this all-in-one device. So
what would be the next step?
Well,
that's even hard to conceive. Like, I feel like we got everything right now. What else do we need?
Right. So I was going to get to that. So the reason why it was so easy for people to transition from what they were to a smartphone is because it was stuff that we're already using on a day-to-day basis. So it's going to be the next evolution of a smartphone. So there's one thing that we all use, I think, more than anything, and that is smartphones. I think it's used more than a TV, a laptop, a computer. Everyone uses their smartphone
without a doubt.
So it's going to be about what is the streamlined version of a smartphone. And however we use that, I mean, it's going to be like people's willingness to use it. I think something like a Neuralink's a terrible idea because people aren't going to want to go through a surgery to implant a chip in their head, right? So there's going to have to be a way for all of what Neuralink can do, but like less invasive.
You watch Sword Art Online? You ever seen this show?
Uh-huh.
The Nerve Gear.
Mm-hmm.
Nerve. That's something that they could be working on right now, I would think.
Yeah, I think all of that's just kind of like intuitive in the sense of like knowing that that's kind of the direction that people are going to want to head towards.
Something that's not invasive to the body, though. I think that's what scares people. When you start talking about like putting chips in people, they're like, "What? I don't know about that." I know I'm not. I'll stay human. I'll die a human before they can do that to me.
And if we go past the idea of like it being misutilized, it's just the idea of having something that could be botched, right? Like
it's going to though. Think about every time we've invented a new technology
gets misutilized.
Yeah, we've made it a weapon. It's just part of being human.
But let's go past that. It's like, it could be like a botched surgery or like the equipment could be outdated and, fail. And then now you've got this bad piece of technology in you. So it's one of those things that like, I don't think people are going to want to use that, but it's totally AR, some type of glasses or, something that's like, how else could we streamline a phone more to ourselves? And that's it being part of our thought process. So like, instead of using like sight and touch, it's going to be more or less about thought and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So finding a way to use like thoughts and feelings to be able to control this whole infrastructure that we built. But I think a very important step before we can get that far is creating these tangible items. And there wasn't a technology that had that before. Like if you look at Web 2, if you had a photo or something, or you had an item or an object, it existed to where it could be just duplicated, transferred, whatever. Like there wasn't a way to build like a surefire structure of like what we utilize in our day-to-day life. So I think this technology is the bridge. So it's like, this is our industrial revolution. We'll start building factories, creating items, building an economy. And then after that, some kind of technology will come out to where we can actually interact with it. I don't think it's going to be like a separate thing. I don't know if it'll be like, oh, hey, I'm going to be in this digital world and I'm also in this physical world. I think it'll be overlaid. So it'll be a way to enhance experiences or like interactions.
So definitely more of an augmented reality type thing rather than just a digital space.
Correct. It will be both, but I think the AR is going to win.
Yeah,
sure.
It did in Sword Art Online too. Yeah, if you watch later in the shows, you'll see
about like Gun Art Online.
No, if you go past that one, Gun Gale Online.
That's what it was.
No, if you go past Gun Gale, you'll see that they implemented a new AR strategy and they were having like augmented reality concerts and everything.
Yep. I'm a big proponent on that. I've been saying that AR concerts is going to be a big thing. And then my favorite thing is eventually had the Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus. And I was like, I've been thinking that for a while where I think everything is going to become this like interactive. I don't really know how it will be implemented because it hasn't happened yet. And right now, Beeple, who's like the number 3 selling artist in the world, he is a digital artist and he's building a concert venue in North Carolina. And they're going to start kind of testing out different ways to how would this work. Mm-hmm. So they're going to start doing test versions of it next year.
That's what they did in Sword Art Online. It was a real space. And the real humans would go to this venue, and the person that was performing was an augmented reality performer. So it wasn't even a real person performing. And when they put their headsets on, when they went in there, then they could see the show.
I think it'll be something like that. I think there'll be where you could see the show, but it'll just be added a layer over it. The MTV Music Awards from this year, through the audience perspective, they were overlaying different, 3D items and stuff. So I think it'll be one of those things too. The outfits you wear, I think, will be connected and create different experiences. And that's how you'll get your access to is a lot of this. It's like when you have it and it's a part of you, it's like, okay, well, you're this level of a character in this thing. So you get better access to certain stuff instead of having to like actually pay for VIP. It's just like owning certain things will just give you those different accesses or like free merch or something.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting way to scale everything. It's just, there's no way for people to, first off, the interest isn't there currently, and the technology hasn't caught up to where it can be scalable yet. But as we've seen with any technology, It has its part where there's interest, speculation, falls off, consolidates, technology catches up, and it becomes integrated. I mean, the same thing could be said with Google or Alphabet. You know, lots of speculation in the beginning, had like the tech bubble crash, consolidated. Now it's, you know, the number one like database in the world. So with YouTube being number two, the number two search engine, and also owned by Alphabet. So pretty much all the world's information is kind of filtered through that one entity.
Yeah. That's terrifying to me also. That's why I love crypto and digital currencies, because, you know, if you can find the ones that aren't, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Centralized?
Yeah. You don't want centralized crap.
Well, unfortunately,
Centralized controls, it's a nightmare for me.
everything always has some form of centralization.
What about, so we have a mining machine. What about that? That's a form of decentralization.
It was, you know, to some degree.
But then it got what, regulated?
No, they upgraded. So mining, while there is some positivity to it, because you can create these nodes, which, you know,
The nodes are decentralized.
because it takes more than one to make the network work. You know, there's a lot of, this is like a whole can of worms, but I'll
Open it. Open it.
I'll shorten it. You know, first off, we'll just go to like energy consumption and like the whole concept of like it's bad for the environment. Running that much processing power to keep the network going is just not feasible. So that's why I got upgraded to like this, you know, digital version of it, which was ETH2. So it did lose a bit of its decentralization when you did that, because it's about, you know, who has the tokens, not as opposed to like who's mining, right? So, you know, that whole side of it, as it being decentralized, it became way more centralized after the merge.
No, we live in a world that's so shady that when a new technology emerges that could actually help out the people rather than just the big companies that own them, we immediately get like slapped on the wrist. No.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're not going to get out of that. Like this whole thing has been done by design for over 120 years.
That's
maybe
why
even longer.
That's why we need to use this new technology to correct the system.
I don't think it is. I mean,
You don't think what?
I don't think that like the new technology in its current state can. And again, it has to do with like adoption. You know, not enough people are into it at an early enough stage. So it's always going to get regulated and centralized before everyone uses it.
But maybe that could be the reason that people join up, is because they see that it can, you know, regulate the government.
I mean, some people, unfortunately, there's some people who are kind of like skeptical of stuff like that and tend to enjoy like the system that they currently work under. So
I hate the system. Like, I mean,
not everyone has the same perspective.
No, this system is a good design. Okay.
It's decent.
But the problem with this system is that it hasn't evolved. So every system on this planet has to evolve to keep going. Even the human body. The human body, a virus gets in it. The body must evolve to overcome the virus. And then you have a better body. You have a body that can survive the virus and comes back again. The problem with our government is it hasn't evolved. So the viruses are in the government right now. So we need to evolve the system to correct for the virus. Get the virus out, which are bad politicians, and then get some new ones in. But our system is fine. Like, I know some people want to like tear it down and start fresh. It's like, no, that would be a total calamity. Like if you started like shutting down governments and shit, like it would just be chaos. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing right now with the way the world is right now. We're seeing chaos. And like no one has an answer for anything. And even the people that are the leaders, the politicians, they don't have answers because they're fucking idiots. Come at me, Nancy Pelosi.
I think it's just a wider distribution of information and kind of how we interact. And I think as humans, we're not used to this type of, I mean, think about even, again, we'll just go back to like 30 years ago. Information didn't travel this fast. You didn't have this much stimulus. So I think it's just us trying to evolve past that as to like why people act the way that they do, or like the interactions.
So you think that the system is fine the way it is?
I think most people...
You think that our politicians are great?
I think most people would say the opposite of that, but that's because I guess my opposition to that is I don't know if like perfection exists, but I don't know if it's like the best case scenario either.
Well, no one's saying perfection exists. What I'm saying is that the systems always have to evolve.
Correct.
and that our system of government hasn't evolved. Like it's pretty much stayed the same ever since I've been alive. And that's why you have people in that are shady. So, I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it's done by design to keep things functioning.
100%.
The way that they are.
So we need to flush out the people that are designing the shit the wrong way and design a better one. Easier said than done.
Well, so again, that's about getting people on board and rallying people's support behind things. People are probably the most skeptical they've ever been. So trying to get anyone to all come together on a singular subject is kind of difficult.
Well, I feel like I see, in my opinion, I feel like it's pretty easy. If you go and sit down with people and you say, hey, do you like this politician that's a Democrat? Do you like this one that's a Republican? One of those guys are going to be your president. And if they're both like, no, I don't really like him, but I guess I'll take this one because he's the lesser of two evils. That's a fucking problem. Like that's the entire system we live in, this duality party system, this two-party system. It's a problem. And I think most people, if you just, they don't have another option. It's like a lot of people, if you ask them, how would you fix this? They have no concept of like how I would fix it. They're just like, well, it's just the system we live in. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be just the system we live in. We can change it. And there are options out there.
I think the options that are out there are kind of like a farce, like a red herring.
I hate that term.
I mean, it's true though. Like, think about it. Like, how many times, especially with most elections, how many times is there even close enough amount of votes or interest for a third party for it to even work?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. We have a two-party system. If we didn't have that method of voting, the past the poll voting method, we could use ranked voting method. That's an option. That's not a red herring. That's a clear option that someone could use. And that would also give us a more concise politician, because you know what ranked voting method is?
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah. Well, for the people that I haven't talked to about this, which is not very many that listen to this podcast. I think the only one that listens to the podcast people I know. But anyway, ranked voting method, what you would do is you would go in, you say you have like, instead of two parties, you have like 5 or 6 different candidates, because more candidates can emerge from this method. You go in and you rank them 1 through 6. Okay. Because I mean, that's the one you want is the top one, next one on down. And what happens is when you're going to count votes, tally votes, if your number one politician that you voted for isn't going to be elected, your vote doesn't just get thrown to the side like it does in past the poll voting, like throwing your vote away. Your vote actually goes to your number 2 politician. So you actually get a more concise vote of who people want in office. It's an option. But no one knows that. I didn't know that exists until my buddy, who's a history teacher, came to me and put it in front of my face. And I was like, holy shit, that's perfect. Like, why are we not doing this? And he's like, I don't know. We're not doing it because no one knows.
I mean, I think that's a portion of it. But again, think about like why the system's designed the way that it is. And
I know why. To make for slavery. Like, we have a system built on slavery. That's what everyone is that works in all this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a form of it's a form of being institutionalized for sure.
Yeah. You go to school, they teach you how to be an employee. They don't teach you how to actually be a thriving human.
Correct.
Yeah, they indoctrinate you into a system of thinking, and most people can never break out of that system of thinking.
Right, and then everything's very divisive that's on the outside of it. So like they create divisiveness to where if you try to think outside of this like systematic way of thinking, then you become the bad person.
Yeah.
So then it's hard to kind of like break people out of that thought pattern.
See, the bad thing about me is I love being the bad person. I live to be the bad guy. It's so much more fun to play the bad guy than it is to play the good guy, you know?
But I mean, that's like the hard part is figuring out a way to get people on board. That's what I was saying earlier.
A way to explain it to everyone.
I mean, you can explain it. You can explain it all day long to everybody. The problem is, how do you break that? I mean, it's almost like a hypnosis or like being brainwashed, right? So some people, it's like impossible to get through to them with anything, because some people are a little more like there's people who I think who are a little more like thoughtful on things, a little more people who are like a little more instinctive on things. And if they're like not really that thoughtful, but they're very instinctful, they can be manipulated easily. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know if it's possible to like undo some things that are put into people's heads.
It's true.
So it's unfortunately not that easy. And it's been done for so long. It's not like you can just like, okay, this has been done for hundreds of years. Like tomorrow I'm going to make everyone get on board with this.
True.
Especially the way the system's set up is if you like play by the game, you get a lot of rewards. I mean, some of these people have jobs to where they get just enough to, it's about getting your needs fulfilled, and everybody's needs are different. And I think a lot of these people's needs are the way that they're taught at a younger age is they build a family. And with that family, they have enough health care to keep their family healthy, and they've got a decent home, and then they've got like really good food because they can afford to eat out, and they've got nice things and whatever. And that's only a fraction of the global value of all assets. But for them, they're like up there, like it's working for them.
Yeah.
But really, they don't have that much, but they think they do.
Mm-hmm.
But some people, no matter what happens, their needs don't get fulfilled. And I think that we're kind of more in that realm of people where you can't, like, there isn't a subset of things that either one of us could gain to where we're like, everything feels like it's right. There's always like this like new search for information or like path to move forward. Some people don't think like that. They like watch their favorite show, they play a video game, they go to sleep or whatever. Yeah. So how do you get them on board? I don't think you do. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Mushrooms.
I mean, psychedelics is definitely a way to like open up a new avenue of thought. But I mean, think some of these people do a shit ton of psychedelics and it doesn't do anything.
I'm thinking, I don't know what kind of people you're talking about. I'm thinking about just like middle class Americans. Like, I don't know if any of those guys ever do them. I think they're terrified of them. I think that's another thing that our society does. They terrify you of things that might actually wake you up.
You talk about terrifying. I think it's more terrifying that out of nowhere, the government just decided to start getting rid of like the stigma for psychedelics or anything like that. Because
did they?
I mean, kind of, you know,
I don't watch the news at all, so I don't know these things.
Yeah.
Someone's telling me they're doing something with weed right now. I don't
know. Basically, like if you have a charge for it, I don't know the exact specifics, but Biden's basically kind of like pardoning a bunch of people who
he's trying to get them charges. Votes.
I mean, that's a part of it for sure.
It's all about votes, man. Those guys, they don't actually give a shit about anyone. Like George Carlin said it best. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. I believe you said it one more time. They don't care about you. Remember that special?
I've seen.
Freaking, it's the truth though. Like they're only doing this to stay in office and stay in power. They don't give a shit about anybody else. And I don't give a shit about them either. They could all die tomorrow for all I care.
And at this rate, it could happen. It does feel like Armageddon's around the corner these days.
I did see something today on Instagram. I was scrolling on through there. You know, they blew the pipe up in Russia, or someone blew the pipe up in Russia. We don't know who did it. But today a bridge got blown up there. Mm-hmm. It's like one of their main bridges. The bridge from like Russia and Crimea. Is that a thing? Mm-hmm. Crimea?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. But yeah, so that's another thing.
Well, it had their like transportation or their freight for like their transportation, like all of this stuff, so where they could bring supplies back and forth. So
yeah, this world's a freaking nightmare. But who actually knows what's really going on?
I think like nightmare situationally, because let's say we didn't build modern day society and we didn't have what we have. I mean, we could just potentially be in the woods like fighting bears.
No, so, I'm a fan of modern society.
You know, like when you say like life's a nightmare, it's a perspective thing. Like, would you rather have no access to any resources?
Let me rephrase that.
Minecraft it.
The idiots that are in power are making it a nightmare. Like, why is anyone still fighting wars? Why are we doing this shit? Like, that's why it's a nightmare. Like, I can come up with a million different reasons to go, okay, we don't need to go fight a war. But no, it's like someone wants us to go fight. So we keep blowing shit up. We keep like poking the bear. We'll say Russia's the bear. We keep poking at them. It's like eventually they're going to launch a nuke. Like, quit poking the bear.
Well, I think both sides poke the bear. You know, like there's people who are always kind of fighting for control.
Well, no, I don't have a clue what's going on over there. So for all I know, we could be the bad guy. They could be the bad guy. But my point is simply fighting is not the answer. Fighting leads to more fighting. Sit down and talk about a solution.
Well, I think the problem has to do with like who's a part of what alliances and who's trying to take over what areas.
But still, so you're talking about alliances again. But we don't need that. We're earthlings.
I don't disagree, but the way that again, you could go way back in history. I think things were way worse, especially like in the Byzantine Empire when they were just burning people and
once again, I'm a fan of modern society, but I do think that we live in a very inefficient system, and the system could be made more efficient and work better for the people.
Yeah, and I think we're getting there. It just unfortunately it takes.
I don't think we are, man. I don't think we're going to make it. I don't think that the world's going to last that much longer with the way things are going right now. I just don't see a solution coming. And I think people are getting dumber every year, which is even worse for making a solution. Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with it. I think we've had a lot of advancements and information's becoming more and more available. And
but are people like utilize the information? That's the problem.
I think a lot of people do. I think what happens is as a society, we highlight the opposites. So like, while there's probably less dumb things that are happening on a daily basis these days, they're just more highlighted. So we're just more hyper realized of the bad stuff and not the good things. So like if we highlighted the good stuff, then we probably wouldn't see the bad things as much, but it's not as interesting for people because people love to see like crazy things. So like, even though there's less crazy things happening, there's more crazy things being captured. And then of course there's platforms that can push them even further. So then we're hyper aware of all the insanity. I mean, I feel like if we had this type of information network and this type of documentation back at like the beginning stages of humanity, probably be way crazier and probably be like, holy shit, I can't believe people were like that. So, it's one of those things that I don't think there's an immediate answer to. And it is correct as long as there isn't some kind of nuclear apocalypse within the next 100 years. I think with the technological advancements and with the information that we have, I think things could consolidate and probably find some type of resolution.
I love your optimism. But
That's not optimism.
I'll tell you where I see it going. There's two options here. One is the nuclear winter, like you were talking about. And I think the second one is idiocracy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Idiocracy, I fully stand by that film. I mean, it's a great example of what you were talking about.
That's my two options, bro. One or the other. I don't see a resolution coming.
I think the third option is one of those things that is probably like the most likely is kind of, I think people banding together and creating like some form of global anarchy. And then that would create the unity that you're talking about.
Oh, I think it's a bad option too. That's going to launch a nuke.
Global anarchy?
Yeah, you have too many. There are people with their fingers on the buttons right now that I don't think.
Those fingers have been on the buttons for like 60 years.
But no, I don't. But I think there's the divide gap is so wide right now from those people with the average person that's what's going to cause them to press the button because they look at us like we're just ants.
Well, look, when the Cold War ended, this hasn't ever stopped. There's been threats of this whole like nuclear war forever. It's just, again, it's being hyper sensationalized through media and stuff. But like everything that's happening now, it's been that way and I don't agree with it. It's crazy that, two countries in the span of like seconds could destroy everything, but it'd be minutes, but still, it's nuts that even exists.
What would you do if they were like, okay, here it comes?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think with where we're at, maybe go to the basement. I don't know if that would do anything. Yeah. I mean,
would you actually try to survive? I'd probably be like, where's it going to land? I'd go there. Just end it quick.
I don't know if there's any trying. It's just hopefully you get lucky. Where we're at, we're in a bad area because we're like a major target.
Mississippi River.
Well, the port city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Shariceport's the international response. So Sharifport is like, if there's any threat globally, there's like a air base in Sharifport that like responds globally to anything. So like basically Louisiana, there's like a small section of it that's like kind of safe. Louisiana's like fucked. So unless you had some kind of rural place that had like a bunker and fucking 20 years of food, like you had all that pre-planned and you were just there when it happened, I don't know like how many options you would have if we're talking about full on Armageddon blowing everything up. No.
Well, no, I would definitely not try to survive. I'm going right where the missile's going to land.
Well, again, I don't think there's any trying. I don't if you're in that situation, because there's just so much like there isn't really much of a way to escape it that I would know of.
That's probably why New Orleans is in a bowl anyway. This is probably the last nuke hit.
Oh yeah.
Now it's bowled out. Yeah.
You're talking about like the alien nuclear technology
Who knows, man?
from like Egypt.
I mean, there are craters we're finding right now. Like there was one up by New York. I think it's where it is, in Delaware, maybe. They found a big crater just recently.
I mean, that was a big problem when we started doing nuclear testing, is they didn't realize how bad it was. So they were just
because
blowing
humans
up.
are fucking
They're just
idiots.
like in the desert.
How do you not realize how bad it is?
Because we didn't have it.
I mean, there's a
And
huge.
then the fallout, like, affected the crops, and generationally we've been eating that.
Yeah. I saw something one time. They were doing nuclear testing underground, and immediately like glasses all the dirt around it, all the rock and stuff. So it was a good way to like cavern out underground places. But I mean, this is my point with like humans and new technology. It's like, yeah, something new emerges. It could be great. Nuclear power would be amazing if we used it just for that. But no, what do we have to do? We have to start using it to kill each other.
Well, so nuclear power wasn't that profitable. And obviously we had more nuclear power plants. And due to, things having to be very corporate and being all about profits, they were poorly maintained. And that's why you had something like 3 Mile Island, because they didn't put the necessary repairs in and stuff to keep it optimal because it wasn't profitable.
Is that a nuclear power plant?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I saw something that got my attention because like that it's just even dumb for them to do that, right? But the fact that we have these giant structures like the big satellite dish that was in Guatemala or somewhere like that, somewhere like overseas, the massive one that's on like James Bond. You remember that one I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it recently collapsed. It's like, how do we as a advanced society ever let something like that happen?
It has to do with like attention and profitability.
Money. Yeah. It's all about money.
So like most of America's infrastructure is pretty bad. I mean, I took a train from here to Philadelphia, and you just see how rotten all the bridges and all the infrastructure is from here to there. They're chopping up old train cars for scrap. I mean, the rail system's terrible. It's all about cargo. There's no passenger. I mean, we could have like a high-speed rail system that goes through the U.S., which we don't have.
That would be dope.
But I mean, if we did, then that would be less need for vehicles. The automotive industry doesn't make as much money. So of course they're going to lobby to keep things like that from happening because they need that for their profits. And then they can charge like 30 to 50 grand for a shitty car.
Such a disgusting world.
I mean, it gets even crazier when you get into like electric cars and everything. I mean, think about like
the batteries for the cars, right?
I don't know about the batteries, but oil and gas industries have a huge stronghold over like the electric car industry.
Mm-hmm.
And right now you have to like refine oil. You have to transport it to gas stations. There's a large cost, or there's a cost basis of having to move electricity currently. And then of course they make profit, and then gas prices fluctuate, whatever. But imagine if, you could get rid of the middle person. You don't have gas stations. You don't have, the need to transport oil and gas and refine it. So if you just have to create the electricity, because fossil fuels create a large percentage of our electricity in America. So, all you have to do is transport the electricity through electrical lines, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I don't have to pay this trucker to drive this oil and gas to a gas station, and then whatever, I can just send it to a charging station. I can still charge you to charge your vehicle at a charging station. The oil and gas company still makes profits, but it cuts out the whole middleman of like needing the gas station and needing to transport the gas and refine it.
We could cut out another middleman there. The power lines.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We just use Teslas. Yeah. Electromagnetic fields.
Well, that's why that didn't happen, because there was no way to regulate or profit off of it.
Right.
But with the electrical lines, you can gauge how much is going through it, the cost basis of upkeeping all of it, and then you can charge the consumer. So I think in the future with electric cars, you're not really going to be saving much with an electric vehicle, because the oil and gas industry is going to up the cost of charging your vehicle.
It makes perfect sense.
And we're already seeing it today, like here with our energy after like the hurricanes and stuff, the maintenance fees and everything. The cost of electricity is only going to continue to increase. That's why it'd be cool to have like solar panels and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then, who owns a large percentage of the solar industry? So it's like the oil and gas industry has kind of built this whole monopoly over everything. And I think that's one side of electric cars that people don't talk about, is like how it creates this like profitability for oil and gas in a way that they don't have currently. It's kind of like when Amazon first started out. It was like, well, how far could this really go?
Mm-hmm.
But then they found a way to build a customer basis. So one thing that Amazon did is they were selling things at a loss to build a customer profile. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to shop here because it's cheaper than this other place. Well, they're selling it at a loss, but they gained me as a customer. And then these other businesses can't survive. They die off. There's nowhere else for me to get the product. So then I have to go to Amazon. And then 10 years down the line, they increase the prices to make back the money that they lost in the beginning. And that's how you create a customer profile.
Fucking Bezos.
So like with the electric cars in the beginning, of course, charging stations are going to be cheaper because then it's basically like, oh, hey, look, this is a better option than my car. We get rid of oil and gas cars.
They jack the price up.
Gosh
dang it, man. It's what I'm telling you, this world's a racket, man. This whole world. It's crazy.
Now, of course, something that you can do with that you can't do with oil and gas is you could get solar panels and you could...
They'll make those illegal.
I don't think they'll make them illegal, but there might be some kind of regulatory measure where you have to pay more taxes or something. Like there's going to be a way for them to profit off of it. Like right now, there's these tax benefits by doing it. But I think once it becomes widely adopted, it'll be the opposite to some degree.
So I know a guy who's an electrical engineer. I'm not going to say his name because I think what they did was fucked up. He works for a large electrical company in Arkansas, and there was a farmer that applied for these grants, and he like took an entire section of his farm and made this a solar farm. And his deal he worked out with them was that the times he wasn't using the solar panels to fuel his wells, they were electric wells. Time he would dump the energy back into the system. Well, they were making so much money off him every year because he was using their electricity to do his wells that they were like, no, we can't do that. So they were supposed to pay him for that electricity. So he was going to actually make some money off the electrical system, and they crawfished on him after he did it. So this man spent like $10 million, whatever it was, to like make this entire like solar farm, and they reneged on him. And I was like, that is so fucked up. And they thought it was funny. He's like, yeah, we got to make our money. It's like, oh my God, this man just built a farm to try to help the environment and stuff, and you guys are doing this to him. That's why people don't use the incentives and things to like do stuff like this, because it's such a shady world. They're gonna like take it back from you.
Right. There's no such thing as like free.
Yeah.
So there's always a catch generally.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about trying to get people onboarded into certain ideas. Well, people are skeptical, and that skepticism's I think planted in there to keep people from creating certain new avenues or ideas.
Right.
I think it's done by design for sure.
Fix it, Waffle. Fix it.
I don't think there's anything that we can do in our lifetimes that will truly fix it, but we can do things that I think one thing that you can do to fix things is by empowering others in a sense of building others' confidence. Mm-hmm. I think one big thing systematically that happens is people's confidence gets taken away from them, especially at a younger age. So I think that's one thing that you can do that's not necessarily like a monetary thing or like a thing that you actually have to go out and like go put your time and effort into, but you could just help build people around you's like self-confidence up. And I think that's one big thing that would help everything that we're talking about is I think if everybody was more self-confident and more trusting in themselves about choices and thinking, that they could come to better conclusions about certain things.
I do that all the time with like some of the comedians that come in here and stuff. I mean, they second guess themselves. I'm like, dude, your set was awesome. And I think art is what's going to like influence a lot of people. Like these comedians getting on stage and talking, like people listen to comedians.
Well, a lot of our current society is based on to kind of taking away people's self-confidence.
Yeah.
A lot of things, it's like a lot of entertainment value comes from like embarrassing others or like creating negativity.
I would even say the critical thinking part too. Like our school is not designed to make critical thinkers. Our school system is designed to make memorize and regurgitate. It's designed to like make you learn a task and do that for the next 40 years. But if you had actual critical thinkers coming out of school, then the world will be very different because they'd be like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Well, society isn't really predicated on rewarding free thinking anymore. It used to be. It was actually kind of praised in society, but we got rid of that over the last, century. But yeah, I mean, think about like, back when you had philosophers and stuff in ancient Greece, and those people were more or less like viewed as a certain way in society. And they had a lot more of like independent teaching where things are more like institutionalized teaching. It's like, okay, well, we're just all going to buy these textbooks and all this information. But we've learned that a lot of that can be regulated.
Yeah.
So
I've run into people like that all the time. They're like, where did you get this information from? I'm like, I thought it. Like you can make your own thoughts. Is when you know this.
Right. And then of course, if you go through like the scientific method, like, is it peer reviewed? Is there more information? But
it's a nightmare.
Back in the day, with independent teachings, there was things were kind of a little more like fact checked and thought out. It wasn't just like, hey, I made this up. But nowadays, everything is very much streamlined and regulated through like a certain few number of sources. So then it's like, well, while this does seem like it could be the safest thing because it's very well structured or thought out, could also be structured and thought out that way to where you can like plant kind of false information in there. And I think that's one side of it that people aren't willing to look into is like, hey, how right is this information?
I think another thing that's bad about the way we do things now is that people, they go down one alley and they stay there rather than like branching out and seeing the big picture and seeing how things connect. I think that's a big problem with academia nowadays is you go into your field of academia and you really don't branch out into other fields. Like everything connects. It's all around us. Everything's connected all the time. But until you can see the big picture, it's hard to like determine that stuff. Yeah.
Well, like again, with today's technology and how we interact, I think there's a bigger macro vision that everyone can see. But again, what I was saying earlier about building self-confidence and everything, I think it's more about like what kind of micro influence can you have? I think that's how you build a stronger impact.
By impacting the people around you. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, definitely, man. Anytime you grow someone else, you grow yourself.
Yeah, I think smaller communal impact is kind of the secret to taking all of this further. Because if you reach a wider audience, I think it's hard to cultivate that further. But if you build like a strong, independent team of people and you empower them and give people good self-confidence and they're able to take that on to the next person, I think it's a lot stronger of an effect than being able to reach a bunch of people, but not actually create something to where they can go off with it and help others. So I think micro is better than macro.
Yeah, I love that. I actually think that's a good place to end. I was gonna get into Charlie Manson with you, but I guess
I don't know much about.
I guess we'll end right here because I mean, dude, that's a yeah. Empower the people around you. Make your influence. Thank you for coming in today, Digital Breakfast.
Thank you for having me. It was fun getting to talk about stuff.
Hell yeah, dude. I'll have you on again, bro. Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about that the other day when we were talking about the podcast. It's like, Waffle hasn't been on the podcast. I thought you had.
No. Yeah. I mean, I was on that other podcast, but I hadn't been on this one.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you on again, brother. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.